The next type I want to look at is the object type. So let's say I have a dog, right? So I'm defining a dog. I can't say this dog is just going to be a string. Well, you can, but I'm just saying I want the dog to be a more complex variable, right? So I want the dog to have, let's say, a name and an age, and I want to be able to capture this as a type, right? So that means that we have to define some kind of object, because I can just say name or number like that. That's not going to work for what we're trying to accomplish. So I can come here. So after I put the colon, I can define an object as my type. So I can put the opening and closing curly braces, and then I can say this dog is going to have a name, and that's going to be of type string, and they're also going to have an age, and that's going to be of type number. So this is a type that I'm defining here. If you remember the format that we worked on, where you define the variable, so let, and then we define the variable name, which is dog, and then we put the colon, and then we put the type here, which is this entire object with two properties, a name and an age. And if I hover over dog, you can see that the type is an object with a name and an age. So this is how we define an object type. And usually you wouldn't do it that way. You would probably define an interface, which is something we're going to look at later. But I just want to show you that you can define object type in TypeScript as well. So then I can go down and then I can say this dog, I can set it equal to an object because that's what I wanted in the first place. And then I can say the name is going to be, say, Blackie, and then the age is going to be, let's say, 3, and I can put the semicolon here, and I can go down, I can console log this dog, and then run the code. Make this a little bigger. You can see I have name, Blackie, age 3, and this is the object. So I define this custom type, which is an object with two properties, so a name and an age. And I could also initialize it right up here like we did for the other variable with the primitive types. So if I make some more room here, I can just delete all this and then set it like this. So I can just say this variable that has this type of object, so a name and an age for the type of the variable, which is an object. I'll assign this object to it, which has the same type. So we have a name and an age. So if I try to change the name, for instance, and I say this is the super name, for instance, now it's going to give me an error because the property names, they don't match, because here I said it's going to be a name, but here I'm defining a super name. So that's not our object that would define right on the left. But if I change this to the same name, now you can see that it's not complaining anymore because I am confining to the way that I define my object. So I'm gonna revert that back, and you can see that everything works. And you can make this as complex as you want it to be. So I can say like fave places, for example, and then I say this is gonna be of type string array, right? And I define those like this. And I can go down here, and let's just say we're just gonna declare it for now. And then here we're gonna say set the dog to equal, and we're gonna pass in the fave place, and that's gonna be an array of strings. So let's say this is like the name of the parks where the dog likes to go, park 1, and then we can do like park 2 or something like that. And you can see that everything works fine. And if I go ahead and run this and expand this a little bit, you can see that we have our object. So we have the name, the age, and the favorite place, or favorite places would be better here. And we can see that everything works fine. Like I said before, you wouldn't usually do this. You would actually define something called an interface or a class, and then you give the dog this type. But just as an example, I just wanted to show you that you can actually define object type. You just use the same format. So you declare the variable, so let dog, and then you put the colon, and then you put opening and closing curly braces, and then you define your properties and the type that this property has to accept. And that's how you can create object type. So you use the curly braces, and then you define the properties and their type. And then whenever you're doing the assignment, you put the actual values. As you can see here, I'm saying, you know, the name is Blackie, the age is 3, and the favorite place is an array of string, which we define up here.